Thank you, thank you. There we were, my wife and I, in the hallway, outside the room where my daughter had just given birth to our second grandchild. We weren't in the room because her husband was there, a midwife was there, a nurse was there, it was crowded. So what they did was they opened the door. So we got the audio version of birth. By the time we got into the room, Zella, my granddaughter, it's Zella with a Z, was now in a rectangular pan with a light over it to keep her warm. It reminded me of the pan that McDonald's uses to keep fries warm. And there she was. You know, her arms were flailing in all directions, her legs were kicking, her head was going up and back, her eyes were so wide. And I thought, oh, what a change from the womb to this. And I thought of Miranda from Shakespeare's The Tempest. She'd been living on an island with her father, a monster, and a spirit, and then people arrive. And when she sees the people, she says, oh, brave new world that has creatures such as these. And I thought of Zella there flailing around, and I thought somewhere in her mind, she must be thinking, oh, brave new world. And we're the creatures. We are the creatures that she sees first. And family stories start right there at birth. We have all been Miranda. And what I want to do today is really kind of tell the story of my life and show you why stories are so important, how powerful stories are. But before I do that, I really have to thank RootsTech and Story at Home for bringing me here to do this keynote. It's an honor to be here talking to you. Stories, family stories. I think they do 5 things, all wonderful, all magical. And the first thing, it links you. It links you to people. And to show you what I'm talking about, I'm going to tell you 2 anecdotes from Ezra. He's Zella's older brother. He's about to be 4 in 3 months. We babysit there. We're blessed because they live about 30 minutes away. We babysit once a week. And sometimes he reminds me of my father. They don't let him watch a lot of television. And so every now and then, he'll sidle up to me, and he'll look up and he'll say, Papa, maybe we can watch a little TV? As if the head shake's going to convince me. I also like that little. You know, he's a good salesman. Just recently, we were there, and I said, you know, it's kind of cold in here, Adrian. It's my wife. And he got up. He's playing with trains. He got up, and he walked over to Adrian, and he tilted his head, and he said, maybe we could have some hot chocolate. It would be so tasty for you. And I could see my father, you know, that would be a good car for you. No, look, you laughed. Why did you laugh? You don't know Ezra. It's not like you're saying, oh, there's that Ezra. He's always so funny. I think you laugh for 2 reasons. One is that there are a truth in here. Really 2 truths. 2 universals. And when I said what I said, in your mind, it was like, yeah, okay, I know that. I mean, the first universal is that kids are adorable. They're funny. You don't know what they're going to say. One time, Ezra said something to me, I laughed, and he looked at me and he said, that came out of my head. And his sister, she's taken to dressing herself, really crazy outfits, stripes and polka dots. She sometimes wears boots in the house or her raincoat. And then once she came out of her bedroom and she was wearing a shirt and pants and Ezra's underwear over her pants. The next day, it was 2 pair of Ezra's underwear over her pants. Eventually, she wanted to wear them all. Luckily, that just kind of faded away. So that's one. You don't have to have grandchildren. You don't have to have children. All you have to have was be around kids to know that's true. And the other thing that's in the telling of those anecdotes is my love for Ezra. I don't think you could doubt that I love that boy. And you don't need grandchildren or children. All you need is to have experienced love in your family. Love that was given to you. Love that you have given to somebody else. And when those two things happen, when you really know the truth of it or experience this universal, an incredible thing happens. We're linked, but it's a special kind of link. You know what it's like? It's like I'm saying to you, hey, come here. Stand over here by me. Do you believe life? Do you believe what just happened? We're together. You're not somewhere else. And that's really important. There was another kind of link going on in those two anecdotes, and it's me and my grandson. Now, I was laughing and smiling when I was telling that story. They tell both those anecdotes a lot. I'm not putting it on. I'm laughing and I'm smiling because I'm back there. I'm back there with him. I'm reliving the moment. It's so special. And I just want you to really know how special this is. And so we're going to do a 10-second game. I want you to pick a memory, a nice memory, a memory you love to think about or that you laugh over. And I want you to remember it for about 10 seconds. It could be anything, around a dinner table, going for a walk, on a vacation, an event, a ritual event. So just pick one, and I'm going to give you 10 seconds to do it. Okay, you can close your eyes too, but don't fall asleep. There's no lights out there. Okay, here we go. Go. Stop. So, were you there? See, I can't see you. So you're going to have to answer. Were you back there? Yes. Yeah, you were. That's one thing. Stories can do other things I've told you. And the second one is, it can tell you who you are. Now, my grandparents on my father's side, they lived in Lithuania. It was 1912, and the Russians controlled the country. And they came to my grandfather's village, and they told him they were going to draft him into the Russian army. You know what that meant for a Jew? 25 years. 25 years. My grandmother was about to give birth. Well, they didn't want to be separated, maybe separated for life, so they escaped. I wish I had been smart enough to talk to them when they were alive to find out what that escape was like, a woman about to give birth. In fact, my father was born on the boat coming over. He used to say, I never knew if I was an American, but I was afraid to ask. He used to tell people he was born in Sioux City, Iowa on July 4th. It's about as American as you could get. Now, that's pretty much what I knew about my grandparents. And last year I came to Story at Home, and I met Michael Hall from Family Search. And I told him that, and I said, I really want to find out more about them. And he said, well, let's see what I can do. In about an hour, he came back with all this material. And the thing I love best were the census, the 1920 census, the 1930 census. In the 1920 census, now my grandparents have been here for 8 years, and suddenly somebody shows up at their door and starts asking questions from the government. They were scared. They knew what the Russians could do. They didn't know what the United States could do. They told the person who asked them they were born in America. They said their language was English. They started to change their boy's name. Abraham became Mickey. Isidore became Albert. They were peasants. They didn't understand what was going on. By 1930, 18 years later, it was okay. They understood. And 18 years later, 1930 census, it said that they were born in Lithuania and their language was Yiddish. Now, I have to admit this. I came here last year a little puffed up. I'm a storyteller. Those genealogists, they know facts, but me, I know stories. What I discovered from what Michael Hall gave me is that the facts are the heart of the story. And that knowledge explains something that I've always wondered about. I'm the American dream. My grandfather came here as a peddler. No education at all. My father was thrown out of school in 7th grade. I went to Harvard. And it's a goodbye party. The whole family is there. It's a wonderful event. And my grandfather takes me away into the kitchen. He opens the refrigerator, slices an apple in half, and hands me half. And he looks at me and he says, "Boychik," that's what he called me. "Boychik, the main important thing when you go to college? Put apples in your refrigerator." I thought he was crazy. But he wasn't crazy. That was his best advice. 50 years later, he's still the peasant from Lithuania. I love that. And I'm peasant blood on the other side, too. My family grew up on a farm on my mother's side, on the same farm for 300 years. And they left Russia because of persecution. And so on both sides of my family, I have peasant blood. I love it. I feel rooted. I feel grounded. I live in a city in a tiny little lot, but I don't care. I still feel like a peasant out on the land. And I come from people who are brave. They both did brave things, and from people who loved family. I got all of that from my grandparents. But then you get things from your parents, too. From them, I got love and acceptance. My father. You want to hear the first memory of my father? We were poor. There was not a lot of money in the house. We never gave presents on birthdays. We couldn't afford it. I was about 6, and I had seen a game in a store window. It was a racing game, little cars, you rolled dice, they went around. I fell in love with it. Don't ask me why. And I told my father, it was my birthday. He worked late as a car salesman. He came home about 8. It was dark outside. He had on a big, dark overcoat. And I remember I looked up at him. I was just hoping. And he caught my eye and he went. And then, before my heart could break, he pulled it out from beneath the overcoat. I don't know whether I hugged him first or the game first. It was so wonderful. And he showed that he loved us. He was a real physical man, and I'd be watching television, and he'd sit down right next to me, and he'd rub my arm. And then all of a sudden he'd be holding my hand, and I knew what was coming. Because before you knew it, he'd jump on me. He'd crush me against the couch, and he'd say, "I'm going to give you kisses." And then he'd start kissing me. He'd give me 50 kisses. And I'd get him off and don't do that again. And he said, "No, of course not." And of course he'd do it again. It was wonderful. And he had a temper. He would yell at you, but you know what would happen? A couple of minutes later, he'd come back in crying. He felt bad about yelling. He loved us. And he accepted things. When I went to Harvard, I knew in his mind, that meant money. I was going to be a doctor. I was going to be a lawyer. When I graduated and I said, "Pa, I'm going to be a teacher, a high school teacher," there wasn't a second of disappointment on his face. I never felt that he didn't like that choice. It was okay. You want to be a teacher? It's your life. And my mother was the same way. She accepted everything I did except for one time. She was 70 years old. She had already, my father had died, she had been with another man, and he had died, and at 70, she met another man. He asked her out. And I know he asked her out because she called me to tell me. So think about this for a communication from a Jewish mother. She said, "In case you're going to call me tonight, I'm not going to be home." It became the third great love of her life. She was 70. She said, "If I were 10 years younger, I'd really be enjoying this." She said, "He got everything I wanted in a man. He likes to eat, he has his own teeth, and he can drive at night." Talk about hitting a universal. And she loved me. Love comes in all forms: candy, flowers, Hallmark cards, or in my mother's case, chicken wings. I love chicken wings. Nobody in my family ate chicken wings. And even though we didn't have a lot of money, she bought them for me. She bought them special for me. You know, I was over 60, and she was still introducing me as, she would say, "This is my baby." Such a nice feeling to it. And when I would go to a storytelling festival, another part of the country, she'd say to me, "You call when you get there, and you call when you get home, otherwise I'm not going to sleep." And I knew that was true. And I was at a festival in California, and I called her, and we were talking. We were probably talking about food. And in the middle of it, she said to me, "Do you have friends there?" It was so beautiful. She was in her 80s, and she was worrying about her son in his 50s being lonely. Well, I need to stop the stories and just point out two more things that stories do, and you've experienced them already. One thing is they just capture life. We are gobbling our existence. We're going so fast. I Googled RootsTech. I got 524,000 responses in a quarter of a second. How can you fathom that? And story, they suddenly stop you, and you're looking at an event. Photos do that. But when you show somebody a photo, you know what you do? You tell them a story about it. I say eliminate the middleman. And videos do it. But, you know, videos, you get them out for special occasions, you know, graduations, recitals. I'm not talking about these kind of big events in life. I'm talking about the everyday events. E.E. Cummings, a poet that I love, he said, "Now is too busy being everything to seem like anything." It's too busy being everything to seem like anything. And I'm talking about those anything, those little moments. Who would take a camera in to film my mother, you know, buying chicken wings? Or take pictures of me and my grandfather in the kitchen? It would never have occurred. I don't have pictures, I don't have videos of anything I've talked about. But you know what I have? I have a storytelling scrapbook in my mind. And the fourth thing it does is connected with that. It is a wonderful way to remember your ancestors. My grandparents are dead, my parents are dead, and when I tell these stories, I'm with them again. Remember, point number one, linked. I was with my grandson, and here I am with my ancestors. I'm 68, and it all has gone so quickly. Was it a week ago when I would sit on my kids and pretend the couch was lumpy? Or grab them and take them into the bed and say to them, "Okay, I'm going to eat you up. I'm a monster, but I need to take a nap first. So don't wake me up or I'll eat you right then." And it was so much fun. I mean, they try to get out from under my arms so quietly, so slowly. And then they get out and they start running, and I leap up and I grab them and I take them back, and we do the same thing. And I can tell you, I gave them kisses the way my father did. Was it a week ago when my daughter went out on her first bike ride alone? The thing was, she wasn't alone. I was on the other side of the street, creeping from car to car to make sure she was okay. It's lucky I didn't get arrested for stalking. I was in the hospital with my son who had broken his wrist, and the doctor said to me, "I don't think you want to be here." And he was right. I knew what was coming, but Zach didn't. And so when he broke Zach's wrist again in order to set it, and Zach leaped off that bed in pain, at least I was there. Beside ancestors, you get other influences. And for me, that's my wife. She's given me so much. We've been married 45 years. Be ready to clap again. We've known each other for 54 years. I met her when I was 14 and she was 13. We met at a neighborhood library, a 2-room storefront library. I came there looking for information about Stanley or Livingston, and I found her. She winked at me. First time anybody ever winked at me. And she looked like a cross between Audrey Hepburn and Jackie Kennedy. I walked right over. A lifetime. And you know what she's taught me and is now in me is what for better or for worse means. I've been ill over the years, and she's been there. Those of you who've been ill, you know what I'm talking about. She's a rock. She's there when I need someone to talk to. And even more important, when I need someone to talk to and I'm not doing it, she will kind of drag me, to start talking. And she really shows all that care and concern. Sometimes when I go to a festival, a storytelling festival, or like this, conference, she will call somebody, and she can't go. She calls somebody, a friend, and asks them to take care of me. She worries about me. She has good reason. I lose everything. I get spots all over my clothes. And remember the chicken wings? Well, I've grown up. My new favorite dish is meatballs and spaghetti. But at my age, it's turkey balls and whole wheat spaghetti. She makes it for me when I'm down. She makes it for me when I'm up. She wants to bring me up, or she wants to celebrate. And presents. I told you about my father and presents. She knows that story. And she's always given me presents, but for the last 3 years, she's done something amazing. And you should steal this idea. 3 years ago, she went to a local bookstore. She knows the owner. And she arranged for me to get a book a month. I could just go in and pick it out. It was already paid for. The next year it was massages, and this year it's been flowers. I can go into my local flower shop anytime. I can buy whatever I want. And the best thing is I don't have to worry about paying for it. It's all been done. Well, talking about me being 68 and kind of going through my life and talking about my wife brings me to the last point. And all of the points have been magical, linking, showing you could find out who you are from your memories, catching time, remembering your ancestors through stories. For me, this is maybe the most important. I do histories. And the last history, Adrian and I wrote it together. It was about the Gettysburg Address. Abraham Lincoln and a soldier named Isaac Taylor, a Union soldier, he was killed at Gettysburg. Now, after we wrote it, we went to Gettysburg. We walked the field where he was killed. And that was so powerful. But even more powerful, we went to the National Cemetery and we visited his grave. On the grave it said unknown, because when they buried him, they didn't know who he was. Subsequently, they found out, but once something is carved in stone in a national monument, you can't change it. And I'm standing there and I'm looking down at the grave and I'm saying to myself, unknown? I know so much about this boy. He's so wonderful. He wanted to save the Union. I mean, he really, really felt it was so important. And he had these wonderful entries. We used his letters and his diaries and found out who he was, and we fell in love with him. He would say things like, well, no soldiers like the rations, and we always want to supplement our daily ration of salt pork. And one day, a pig introduced him to our sentry. And he generously volunteered to be a martyr for the Union cause. How could you not love him? And I'm looking at it, and I looked up. There was a sea of unknowns in front of me. A sea of them. And I thought to myself, what we've just done is we've witnessed for him. We witnessed for his life. A life that could have remained unknown. When my mother was dying, She was under hospice care. And I was there, it was at home, and the caregiver said, "Would you like to feed her?" And I said, "Yes, certainly." Now, she had developed an infection in her neck. It swelled up so much, it cut off her vocal cords, which was tragic. There was so much she wanted to say, and she couldn't. And she no longer could chew. They were giving her liquids. And I'm sitting there, I'm waiting for the caretaker, and she came back. She handed me an eyedropper and milk. And I walked over to the bed, and there my mother was on her back, her mouth open. She looked like a little bird. And I was dropping milk into her mouth. And I saw the circle of life. I imagined her feeding me as a baby, and here I was at her death, feeding her. And that's what I've tried to give you in this half hour, my circle of life. I've tried to tell you the story of my life using all these little anecdotes. Each one of them could become a story by themselves, but all of them together equal my story. And I hope you can see how powerful they are to get that story out. Why are we here? We're here because we love family stories, and we know how valuable they are. We're here to find new ways to tell those stories face to face, to work with genealogists who are going to find new stories for us or explore the stories we already know. We're here to suddenly move into the world of social media, give and get advice, and find the way to launch our stories onto the water and have them link up everywhere in the world. We're here to preserve our stories, to learn how to do that in audio or in video, or taking that storytelling scrapbook out of our minds and actually putting it on paper. Why are we here? We're here to witness for our families, for our friends, for ourselves. And we're here to rejoice in this improbable and wonderful thing called life.